Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Big news, Canon has just released a new prime lens, their 135mm f1.8 L prime lens. This is a pretty exciting announcement. If you photograph a lot of people, a portrait photographer like me, this is, or it was in their EF version, a killer lens. They also announced the R6 Mark II at the same time, and I'm sure that's a great camera, but I wanted to talk about the lens because good glass will make the biggest difference in your photography, far more than a new camera body will. I recently did a video talking about the camera RF ecosystem and lenses, and I talked about they really need some new ones, and so this was a pretty welcome announcement. And again, this is an important one. This prime in the EF version was absolutely stunning. And my experience with RF lenses over EF is that they tend to get quite a bit better. So I'm pretty excited about this and I'm looking forward to it. Okay, I'm not going to be showing sample images in this video. This is a preview. I haven't had my hands on the lens yet. So I'm not going to actually say what it can do until I can shoot a few images with one. Let's get into it. So let me start off by saying I do not own the EF135, but I have rented it quite often when I needed the length. My workhorse top quality portrait lens is the 100 2.8, and this lens is second to none in image quality. And when I have used the 135, I've had the images completely match in quality. They are really good lenses. Now, my comments in this video are going to be related to photography, not video. And why would that matter? You say, well, the focusing motors in these sometimes are a little bit noisy and some other issues about focus breathing. I'm not going to get into all that. I'm going to get into what I do, and that's portrait photography. Now, first, what I want to do is talk about why you might want to use prime lenses instead of zoom lenses in your photography. That's a really big decision. So as you know, there's two approaches to lenses. You can use zooms that cover the range you might want, or you can use discrete prime lenses. Right out the gate, the prime lenses are going to have higher optical quality, especially in the L lenses. The L primes are second to none. Their optical quality is just stunning, and you can see it always. Whenever you look at it after you've shot, you will see the quality of these lenses. Now, other than the lens quality, I would argue that it takes a little bit more seasoned photographer to use a zoom lens properly. Let me get into what I'm talking about. A lot of people use a zoom to reframe their shots. And that's okay as long as whatever focal length you're pulling up is what you really want the image to look like. It's so easy to just yank the zoom ring and get your subject to the size you want that you've got to remember that you're changing a lot of dynamics when you yank that zoom ring. You're changing the depth of focus. You're changing the perspective. Those two things really matter, especially for me when it goes to print. And you can get away with a lot of stuff in digital. It's hard to see a lot of things, but when you go to print, a different perspective and a different depth of field, when two prints are together, it's really noticeable. And so you have to be very deliberate. I learned about lenses in the cinema field where everything was a choice. You knew I want 50, I want 85, I want the depth of field that comes with that. If I have to reframe, I'm going to use foot zoom or a dolly. I'm going to move in or out. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with zooms. As you've seen from other videos, I use a zoom 70% of the time. But I always look at what focal length I'm shooting to make sure it's what I want to do. If you have that discipline, great, the zooms are great. But you still ain't going to get the quality of those primes. Just saying. One of the reasons I've never owned the 70-200, which is a stunning zoom, especially the f2.8, it is gorgeous, is I never really have needed the 200. That's bringing me into why I love this 135. This 135 as a focal length when you can actually move to and from your subject, like if you're not shooting weddings or events where you're limited. That 135 focal length, when you stop it down, the depth of field and what it can do, maybe it's a sweet spot optically for a glass, I don't know, but God, it looks really good. And between this one and that 135, it is just, you're hitting that sweet spot for portraits and photos of people, and you have control and beauty. It's really a good focal length. If I want the absolute top image quality, I'm going to put that prime on. It's going to be the 85, the 100, or the 135. And I'll go get it if I need it because it's worth it. So for me, it boils down to, if I'm going to spend over $2,000 for glass, I'm going to do it on that 135 instead of the 70 to 200 because I just don't need that 200 end, and the optical quality of that 135, it's that good. Okay, so what's exciting about this new lens? Most of my knowledge is just like you, seeing the information released online and on the internet and on YouTube. But I've had past experience with Canon, so I can kind of look at the specs and know what that's going to mean to me photographically. First, of course, is its RF mount. With the RF mount, you get the additional function ring. You get different functionality. It's going to add more functionality. That's not a huge thing to me. I don't use a lot of the auto functions that are in the lenses, but it's in there. It's been upgraded. I mean, as a blanket statement, all of the RF lenses optically are significantly more improved than the EF versions. A lot of the EF lenses were fairly old designs. They were good, but they weren't new designs. So RF brings them up to modern specs, especially with the high megapixel cameras where you need that resolution. All right, so I'm doing this a couple of days after this is released, so I had to print off some of these specs. So first off, it's faster than the EF version. The EF version was f2. This one is 1.8. That tells me a lot about the optics right there, that they made the lens a little faster. That's going to mean some significant optical improvements. It's got 5.5 stops of image stabilization. With a 135, that's really important. Yeah, when you're hand holding that 135, I use sticks a lot, but when you're hand holding, you really want that stabilization, especially if your camera doesn't have IBIS. It's got the nano USM focusing, which is supposed to be a little bit quieter and quicker. I'm all for the quicker. Unless I'm using video, I don't really care about the quieter. Like I said earlier, that I'm not really talking about the video, but it's a better focusing mechanism. Well, and the other thing about the optics is that they have improved the coatings for chromatic aberration and flare. That's a big thing. And I've noticed that all the EF lenses that have moved to RF that I've looked at, I've noticed significant improvements in this area, and that's always welcome. I mean, whenever you can just have that better optics with aberrations, with flare, all of it, with light gathering, you're going to appreciate this. It was a great lens that now looks to me like it's just moving into the super category. I really am excited about seeing this lens. A con I've heard is, well, I don't know if it's really a con, it's a little bit bigger, the barrel's bigger. As you've seen on RF lenses, typically the barrel is a little bit bigger for new mechanisms and new functionality. It won't matter to me. If it matters to you, that might be a thing. This lens is a really exciting announcement for portrait photographers like myself. And again, this video has just been a preview. I haven't shown any images, but I want to get my hands on one of these and actually do some work with it and shoot some images, and I'll make a more in-depth video at that time showing what the lens can really do. If you're curious about some other lenses I've looked at from a portrait perspective, I'll have the link here. You can check that out. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I can't wait to get a hold of one of these lenses and actually shoot with it and make another video and show you what it can do. Until the next video, cheers.